probably, many of them for whom there is, or against whom there isn't even a case, and there they are, suffering, and many of them dying, in African detention centers and in prisons in horrific, subjected to horrific living conditions. So those are the rule of law institutions. Then we've talked about I always like to talk about the police and security forces as being sort of the perpetrators, as sort of the protectors versus predators. Again, this idea of extortion. Of people who are barely squeaking by in their living, and then you've got the police that instead of ensuring that there is safety on the roads and ensuring people don't speed and ensuring that there's order and that people are protected from coupures de route, criminals, they set up checkpoints and extort money from people. Even the World Bank, I think, or the IMF, I can't remember which one, did a report looking at the phenomenal amounts of money that is spent, that people have to give up to, in Côte d'Ivoire, to the fameux coupures de route. And some of them are even, gendarmes and police who set up checkpoints and extort phenomenal amounts of money from people who are already suffering. So then, next we'll move on to the problems with the parliament, and I won't go into this too much because my colleague from NDI will talk about that. But again, the parliament, which is supposed to be provide oversight and represent the people, end up sort of, I'm not quite sure what they do in a lot of these places. I mean, some organizations have set up these parliamentary report cards. I remember in Kenya, I think it was, where a videographer would go there and would sort of like film the parliamentarians as they were sort of nodding off and then putting it online. I think our friend in a lot of this is new media, because some of this stuff can then be transferred out. But looking at, whether they attended, if they even voted, if they ever presented a piece of legislation, if they ever met with their constituents. So part of the problem with parliaments is that there's sort of a lack of expectations on the part of the people of what the parliament should actually do for them. When I was in Sierra Leone, I remember working with local colleagues, and there was a bill we were trying to get passed, or we were trying to set up, anyway, we're trying to do something with the parliament. And I said to my colleagues with the local human rights organizations, well, why don't let's set up a meeting with 2 or 3 members of parliament. And they said, oh, we can't do that. And I said, why? And they said, no, but we can't go talk. These are the big men. We can't just go there and present ourselves and present our ideas. And I said, why not? They're there. By the way, you're paying them every time you pay taxes. They are there for you. So parliaments are often not used by the people. They're not. They're not used to, and they're not sort of forced to fulfill their responsibilities vis-a-vis their own constituents. Same thing with local governments, which unfortunately often are involved in selling off resources. We've seen that in sort of resource issues all over, and that sort of form an alliance with the political elite instead of, again, representing the people. And then lastly, what we see there is this crisis of impunity. I see everything through the prism of impunity. I guess I would, being Human Rights Watch. But you have, I always like to say in Africa, you have people, who have committed getting away with crimes, from common crimes to crimes against humanity. It's happening less and less with international justice, with the ICC, with people waking up now. But in far too many places, you have people, who have murdered their way into office, who have committed horrific crimes, who have fostered and fomented divisions and violence against members of other ethnic groups, who hold high-level elected office and have absolutely no fear of ever being investigated and held accountable. It becomes a crisis of impunity, and all of that leads to, or in part as a result of what I always like to say is the culture of low expectations, or the tyranny of low expectations, of people on the ground who do not expect enough from their police, from their judiciaries, from their elected officials, both local and national. And so part of what we try to do is flag some of this issue, work with local groups, and to get them to expect more and to demand more with respect to respect for human rights. So maybe I'll stop there. Just one other thing in terms of lastly, how we can work together. I think with Binta, your collective new organization, as well as local groups. But I really think there's a role for a diaspora in terms of